Hi everyone, today as a new topic to the macroeconomics of class 12, I will be talking about the methods of calculation of national income. So when we talk about the methods of calculation of national income, we will be talking about the three methods of calculation of national income. So there are three methods of calculation of national income. The first method is known as the income method of calculation of national income. Second is known as expenditure method of calculation of national income. And the third method is known as value added method of calculation of national income. The third one, value added method of calculation of national income, is also known as the product method of calculation of national income also. But for today, specifically, I will be talking about the expenditure method of calculation of national income. How can we calculate national income using this expenditure method? So, we will be talking about the different values that we have to consider in the calculation of national income under the expenditure method. Now, let's go to the expenditure method of calculation of national income. But before I begin, how do we calculate national income using this method? Let me tell you something first. Let's say that you, Mr. XYZ, have rupees 100 in your pocket. Now, that rupees 100, this is your income. Your rupees 100 can be spent in two ways. Either you consume some amount of rupees 100 and the rest is saved, or you can spend this rupees 100 your income in another way, or you can consume. Consumption is compulsory. You can consume some part or portion of this income and remaining is invest. You can invest in some ventures. So now let's talk about here. If your income is equal to consumption and investment. Now something important is here in this equation. Though I was taking the example of your income, a person income, we can apply the same idea, the same knowledge in our national income also. The amount of our national income is spent in two ways. First way is to consume, and the remaining amount of money is invest. So remember this consumption and investment, if we combine together, the expenditure that we incurred in India, those expenditure incurred are either consumption or investment. If we are able to add up all the consumption and investment together, that we will get the national income. So this is basically the main foundation idea of the expenditure method of our national income. Now let's go to this one. Now let me come to the expenditure method that we have in our text. Let's go to it. In your book, our expenditure method is given by an equation. That is, our national income is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Now, let's see one by one what do you mean by C, what do you mean by I, and etc. First, let's go to this one, C. C refers to, here we are referring to the private final consumption expenditure. Private final consumption expenditure. Remember this C represents the amount of money spent by individual like us, household like us, that we spend in the consumption. But remember here, this consumption is of final want. So I will be telling you with one example. So this C represents private final consumption expenditure. Now let me give you why it is final consumption, why it is not only consumption. Now let me give you one example here. You have rupees 100 in your pocket right now. If you have rupees 100 and you go to a shop and buy let's say that 40 rupees worth of a cake from out of rupees 100, you spend 40 rupees in the buying of cake. And you buy this cake with an intention of consuming it. At that time, this 40 rupees is known as private final consumption expenditure C. On the other hand, if you have rupees 100 and out of that rupees 100 that you have, if you are spending, let's take one example, just an example, if you are spending 50 rupees in the buying of sugar, so you buy sugar from a market, from a shop. Why you are buying this sugar? Let's take this assumption that you are buying this sugar because you have a hotel. In that hotel, you are going to use this sugar and you are going to sell tea to the customer. In this case, this 50 rupees is not private final consumption expenditure. Why? Because this rupees 50 that you spend in the buying of sugar is not meant for consumption. This 50 rupees that you spend for buying of sugar is meant for the making of profit through the selling of tea in your hotel. That's why there should be difference between private final consumption expenditure and investment, which we will do in the next part. Next, let's go to the, in the formula I comes second, but I want to finish the G first. What do I mean by G? G means it is government final consumption expenditure. Let me repeat. Government final consumption expenditure. Like us, you and me, our government, either it is the center or the state government, used to buy lots of goods and services from the market. And they buy these goods and services with an intention of consuming. That amount of money that government spent in the buying of such goods and services for their own consumption purposes is known as G. So simply, C is the expenditure of us, private common people like us. G is the amount of money that government spent in the goods and services that are supposed to consume. Here comes the most important and the most interesting one, I. What is this I? This I is known as investment expenditure. Investment expenditure, or let's remember this, the second term. Often people get confused in this second term. This investment expenditure is also known as gross domestic capital formation. Gross domestic capital formation. Investment expenditure is also known as gross domestic capital formation. Look here. This is capital formation. In another word, the amount of money that is spent by either the consumer or private people like us or the government that led to the creation of extra assets, extra capitals is known as I. Now, this I will be again divided into two subtypes, which I will do later on. But first of all, let's finish this one. The final part, the fourth part of our national income calculation is export minus import, which is known as net export. Remember this, the net export is export minus import. But remember this, the value of net export can either be positive or negative. There are some tricky questions are there. For example, in examination regarding this, in examination, if net export is given as 60, this means positive 60, then the value of 60 is to be added in the value of national income. On the other hand, if the same net export, which formula remains the same, is equal to minus 60. Now, remember this, when our net export is equal to minus 60, it means our import is greater than the export. Even though the formula remains the same, because of this symbol, we know that import is greater than export. That's why this time, instead of adding to our national income, it should be subtracted from our national income. This kind of tricky questions like calculation, in terms of calculation in examination, will be covered in whole new class of mine. So please wait for that. If you are interested, do let me know that. Now let's go to one by one, the subtypes. Now let's see. C, as we already know, refers to private final consumption expenditure by household and person like us. G is the government final consumption expenditure which are spent by the government of India, the government of state, whatever, if we consider for the state government. X minus M refers to the net export, which can be positive or negative depending on the values that is given in the examination question. Now let's go to this I. In my earlier, a few minutes ago, I have already told you that I represent investment expenditure. This investment expenditure is also known as gross domestic capital formation. This gross domestic capital formation, or I, is divided into two types. The first one is known as, let me write the full form first, gross domestic fixed capital formation. Fixed capital formation, or this is GDFCF. Look here. Here, investment expenditure is also known as gross domestic capital formation. This gross domestic capital formation or the investment expenditure are classified into two subtypes. First one is known as gross domestic fixed capital formation, that is GDFCF. Don't forget this. GDCF and GDFCF, they are not the same. Okay, this gross domestic fixed capital formation is only one part of the gross domestic capital formation. Anyway, the second part of the investment expenditure or the gross domestic capital formation is known as change in stock. Change in stock. In order to find change in stock, we use this formula, that is change in stock CS is equal to closing stock minus opening stock. Closing stock minus opening stock. Anyway, in examination, if change in stock is given, gross domestic fixed capital formation is given, then we have to add them together to find the value of investment expenditure. In case if only gross, let's say that only gross domestic fixed capital formation is given but not change in stock, then we will consider this gross domestic fixed capital formation as the value of investment expenditure or as the value of gross domestic capital formation. Don't get confused this one. So now, look here, in this change in stock, we have this closing stock and the opening stock. In examination, it is not necessary that change in stock will be given directly. For example, change in stock is equal to 50. If that is, it's okay, it's fine, it's very easy. But there are some questions where instead of giving this change in stock, they might give you the closing stock is equal to 50 and opening stock was 20. So if this is given, remember this closing stock and opening stock, if we subtract each other, we will get change in stock. This change in stock in return is part of the investment expenditure or gross domestic capital formation. Now we are almost done. Lastly, if you are able to find the private final consumption expenditure, investment expenditure, government final consumption expenditure and export minus import, then by combining these values together, we will get one value of national income that is known as gross domestic product at market price. Let me repeat. If you are able to add up private final consumption expenditure, investment expenditure, government final consumption expenditure and net export, then we will get one value of national income. One value of national income, that is gross domestic product at market price. In my earlier class, we have already finished the different values of national income. If you have not understand the different values of national income, please watch my first video. So once you are able to find this gross domestic product at market price, then you have to go to the next step. Why is that? Please wait a moment. In examination, if the question asks you find national income using expenditure method, when they say like this, when they say find national income, then this gross domestic product at market price is one form of national income. But in examination, if they ask to find you the national income, then they are referring to net national product at factor cost NNP-FC. That means in examination, if they ask you to find the national income, then you have to convert this gross domestic product at market price into net national product at factor cost. But how do we convert this gross domestic product into net national product, which has already been covered in my first video? So anyway, as a revision, I will tell you this. In order to convert this gross domestic product into net national product, then we have to follow this step. So we need to find net national product at factor cost from the given one, the GDP MP, gross domestic product at market price. In my first video, I told you the difference between net and gross. In the value of gross, we have depreciation, but we need to find the value of net. That means we need to subtract depreciation. If we subtract depreciation from the gross, then this G will be converted into net. Similarly, we need to find national value. In this domestic value, we don't have NFIFA. Here, in this national value, we have NFIFA, but we need to find this one. That's why here, since domestic value don't have NFIFA, we need to add NFIFA. Sometimes this NFIFA is also written as NFIA only. It doesn't matter, it's the same value. NFIFA or NFIA, it's the same. Lastly, the difference here is factor cost at the market price. Now, these factor costs need to be found out, but what we get in our calculation right now is the market price. That means market price, in order to convert into factor cost, then we have to find what is the difference between market price and the factor cost. The market price and the factor cost are different in matter of net indirect tax only. That is, in market price, we have NIT value, but in factor cost, we don't have NIT value. So, in order to convert this MP into FC, we need to subtract net indirect taxes from the market price. After that, this MP will be converted into FC. So, this is how, once we get GDP MP from the first equation, then it is easy to convert that GDP MP into NNP-FC, which is national income. But lastly, in examination, if the question asks you to find national income, find out national income using expenditure method, you need to convert this GDP MP into NNP-FC. But in case, if they intentionally mention the values of national income to be find out, for example, find the value of NDP, FC, etc., then you have to follow the step to convert this GDP MP into NDP-FC, like this. Anyway, this kind of conversion and calculation and the tricky part asked in the board examination will be covered in another video. If you have interested any video and if you have any problem in class 12 economics, please comment in my YouTube channel, or you can suggest me any topic that you want, any chapter that you want. To cover a whole chapter in a whole one single class is a little bit it's a lengthy one, so I will be trying to complete one small topic in one video also. So anyway, thank you very much for watching my video. If you are interested in my class, do subscribe to my channel, and if you have any problems, if you have any doubt, then please let me know in my comment section. And if you have any friends that you think need help, especially during this lockdown period, please let them know that we have these online classes for macroeconomics. If you have any topic you can suggest me, then I will try to make a new video on that topic that you have suggested. Thank you very much for watching my video fully. Thank you.